Hello, everybody. Welcome. Happy International Women's Day. My name's Clare Farrell, and I'm joined this evening by three wonderful rebellious women who will be celebrating and discussing female activism with. I've got Ina Maria Shikongo from Namibia, Angie Zelter from the UK, and Howey Oe from China joining us. So let's go over to a quick video and see them in action first.
I pay homage to Mafikile, who was gunned down in her home for opposing a coal mine in KwaZulu-Natal. I pay homage to Kinsarowiwa in the Ogoni 9, who were hanged 25 years ago for opposing the projects in the Niger Delta. I pay homage to my father today, Pondo Yanangobe, who lost his life 39 years ago for fighting against apartheid in Namibia. I pay homage to all the defenders of human rights, of environmental rights, and we will not stop. We will not stop, and we will get Recon Africa out of Namibia with your help. We will not let this become another Niger Delta. We will not. We also want to live in peace. We also want to thrive. And we can only do it if we stop the fossil fuels and transit to renewable energies. Stop the fossil fuels.
Yes, I've got a crane to hang on the fence when I cut in to get in. It's a piece crane. I've got a hammer to hammer the aircraft. I've got my police statement, which is done by video, which is probably the first time that that's been done as a police statement, with the four of us on. I've got a booklet which explains the issues behind the Ploughshares action and what Indonesia's up to in East Timor. And I've got a banner which says "Stop Genocide in East Timor." Oh, and I've got a visiting card, which I shall leave in the plane.
On any of the charges, it's not guilty.
My name is Oe and I'm an 18-year-old vegan, zero-waster and a climate striker from mainland China.
气候紧急！
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 澄清真相！气候紧急！澄清真相！
Greetings from Germany to China.
I'm an Indian climate activist.
来自中国湖南。
From Germany. 来自新加坡。
What do we want? Climate justice! When do we want it? Now! Woo!
I'm fighting to save our planet and our future.
I just let you know that we do see you and we do hear you. You're one of us.
加油！
我期待一个美丽的地球，所以请大家重视气候紧急状态。
完专一心为人类的生死战斗，绝对不要放弃。
气候危机是个不可否认的现实，所以我的中国朋友们，让我们继续提高音量，提高气候危机的意识。
Please come and join China's silent strike for climate. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, tech team. So yeah, welcome everybody. Welcome women. Welcome all the women. Welcome all the men. I'm really honoured to be joined by these people today. We've got Ina Maria. I'm just going to say a few things about them. So she told us earlier that she feels she's been an activist her whole life. I'm sure she'll speak about that in a minute. She is an artist and a fashion designer. She founded Fridays for Future in Namibia. To help give a voice to children and young people. And she's campaigning against the oil drilling in the Okanvango Delta, which XR has been trying to support, highlighting recently, and fighting the company Recon Africa, which is planning to extract lots of fossil fuels there. We're also joined by Angie Zelter, who's a long-standing peace activist. She's been arrested over 200 times. It's quite an effort, I'd say, in your life, Angie. Been through around 90 court cases. You just witnessed the result of one of those, which was very positive, and has spent 2 years total in jail, and has lived in Palestine, and has a huge amount to teach us all as a peace movement elder in our movement in XR. And also Howey, who is China's first school striker and Fridays for Future activist. She wants people to just stop having meetings with climate activists and to get active and get doing things. She's massively inspired by Greta sitting alone with her placard, and she has indeed sat alone with placards herself. Howey, welcome. So hi everybody. I'm going to try and just move around through the three of you through a few questions that we've got lined up. So the first one, and I'll come to you first, Howey. What inspired you to become an activist?
So first, I'm very happy to be here and meet you all. My name is Oe, and I'm an 18-year-old climate activist from China. And I first inspired by Greta Thunberg, the Swedish climate activist, and I really inspired by her actions. And she sits in front of the Swedish Parliament for entire 3 weeks. And although on the first several days she's completely alone, but I think she's courage and she's hard of use all her strengths to fight for the climate really inspire me. And she starts the whole movement that millions of people follow the wave of global climate strike, really inspiring to everyone. So I think that's inspired me a lot. And for me, is that this climate action is a thing that everyone should put its all strengths in it, and it is the biggest threat to human civilization. So in this fight, we need to set aside all the differences between human, for example, the ages and the regions, the nations and the countries. We need to set all these differences aside, because we are just human. We are just this species, so that we can really unite fight this crisis. And also, I think that as a Chinese youth, I see myself as the future of our human species, that I really feel that Chinese people should also stand out and join the global call for the climate action. And this is the call for international cooperation and the international peace. So I really think that in this time we should also join this fight and fight for all's future.
Fabulous, thanks, Howey. Let's go to you, Angie. What inspired you first to become an activist?
When I was 21, I was in Cameroon, and a Cameroonian said to me, "What are you here for?" And I said, "To come and help." And they said, "If you want to help, go back to Britain." And that's where all our problems are coming from colonialism and from the corporations. And that's what inspired me and has continued to inspire me through the decades. And I totally agree with you, Howey. We need to start thinking of ourselves as global citizens. We can't be thinking of ourselves in very narrow, self-interested ways. We're global citizens.
Yeah, super. Thanks, Angie. It's really nice as well to hear you both coming from such a peace place. Basically, I think this is sort of something that I can feel the climate movement moving more towards, and the environment movement moving more towards, understanding that it's also about peace, it's also about freedom, it's also about people's liberation. Ina Maria, do you want to come in? What inspired you to become an activist?
I think for me, it's definitely my past, how we were brought up as refugees back in the days when when SWAPO was fighting the apartheid regime. So we were born in refugee camps, and then I was one of the fortunate ones who moved to East Germany, which was very communist. So we grew up with the hardcore communist Che Guevarian ideologies. And we were brought up as soldiers as well. I mean, we had to do military training from the time that we were, I left when I was 11. So so that was like from a very, very, very young age. And you just had to know how to survive. Life is just different when you are born in a place where there's conflict and you don't know what peace actually means. But that was my drive, and also obviously because my father was also one of the war heroes that passed away during battle. So he was also one of my inspirations. I mean, one of my, he was an inspiration to me. And I must say that when you grow up with very strong socialist ideas, and then after independence, you realize that it was all stories that you were being told. Yes, it becomes very, very disappointing. And also because you know that you have lost a parent in the war because of certain ideas. And right now they are completely being sidelined as if that was not the reason why our parents chose to take up arms. So, my life has been shaped by my past. And that's the truth. And why I'm also advocating against this new development is because when looking at our country that is rich in resources, and then you look at the level of poverty that is literally going up every day, and the level of corruption as well, you realize that this whole system is just a scam. It's only there to enrich the ones who come in with neo-colonialist ideologies like Recon Africa, who want to apparently develop the people of Namibia when they just want to poison our waters, and that is the truth. I mean, they are taking over people's fields, and I don't see the difference between what happened when the Irish moved to New York, where they bought New York for how many dollars? And, at least there they paid $1. Here, Recon Africa paid nothing. So, like for the lands that they've put the drills on. So it is the same pattern again that is repeating itself, where you have people from the outside telling you exactly what you need, but they are coming with a destruction. And we as countries, especially in Africa, we have been victims to this kind of development. And there is no way out because our leaders have been bought. They are corrupt. They have forgotten why some of our parents have given up their lives, so we, the future, can have the future that they didn't have. And it's basically our countries, we don't have a choice. We are condemned to death, and that is the reality because of how the system is, because of how the system functions, because of all these trade agreements and all of these rules. I mean, the Ramsar, UN, all of those conventions that Namibia signed, they are being thrown out of the window, including the Paris Agreement. So one company can make money. This is a genocide that's going on. So obviously, when you see something like this, it's very difficult to really keep quiet.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think especially for women, we were thinking earlier about the kind of matrifocal lens, if you like, the female-led kind of energy that we can see in a lot of activism, and I can sense, particularly in the UK system in XR, there's lots and lots of people. Firstly, I think recognizing the work of the women, often feeling like the glue that holds people together, doing a huge amount of emotional work, and also showing up in so much leadership. So yeah, I guess there's a question here. What's the most daring thing that you've done as an activist? So maybe if I stay with you in Maria first, and you could just say something about some of the daring things that you've taken part in.
I think I am being an artist gives me the freedom to express myself in any way that I want. But I must say the most daring thing that I've done, which where I must say that I wasn't myself. I was possessed. It's this year when I confronted Recon Africa at the public consultation that they had in the capital city. So I was in a space where I was filled with rage, because you know that they're greenwashing, you know that they're lying, and you know they pretend to be so important. And also, I think what really made me angry is the fact that the guy who's doing the EIA, the commissioner, sorry, he was accusing me of being a non-indigenous person. So I don't know what about me makes me non-indigenous, because I do have a Themba and San ancestry, and they are considered as indigenous people of Namibia. But my direct descendancy is the Bantu, and you know, we migrated from Central Africa. So I was angry because it for me, it showed me how little regard they have for Black activists. Because for them to label me as a non-indigenous, meaning a white activist, and playing the racial card, that really made me upset. So I just had to put them in their place that, listen, we have the, we got the power, we got the power. So I told them off. But you can see it. It is somewhere on Facebook. You can see the whole presentation. And I think, to date, that is the most daring thing I did. But yes. Yeah.
Thank you, love. Okay, go for it, Angie. I know we're going to get a good story here. What do you think is the most daring thing?
It's a strange thing to think about daring. I don't know, really. I mean, the most scary thing, I guess, was helping organize a whole load of international solidarity people in Palestine to stand up against some really fanatical Jewish settlers that had settled in an area which belonged to the Palestinians in the West Bank, because they were armed and they were attacking the Palestinians. And we tried to set up a protection for them. And they were with their guns and their knives, and we were around the Palestinians that had gathered together, sat down when the settlers arrived, stopped picking their olives, we'd arranged this beforehand, that if they came, this is what we would do. And then the few of us internationals were trying to just, with our hands, just say, stop it, But we had arranged for journalists and people on the hills to be taking photos of this. And we did actually succeed that day. But it is quite scary with having no weapons, which I don't agree with. You shouldn't have weapons, but to stand up against these fanatics. So I guess that was the scariest thing I've done anyway.
Yeah, and do you want to maybe say a little bit about what we saw in that film, because I know that's been sort of doing the rounds recently within XR, and Zoe, who helped to set this up, has been filming activists since back in those days. So it'd be really interesting if you share how that worked.
Well, there were 10 women together organising this over a year to take out of action an aeroplane that was going from Britain to the Indonesians to continue the genocidal bombing of East Timor. And so 4 of us were known for the action, but there were 6 other people who, for family reasons and in order to be able to do support work, were not named. And 3 people got in and destroyed the Hawk jet, and I came afterwards. And the 4 of us, so that together we managed to destroy that aeroplane just by bashing on it with a hammer. And a video had been made of why we were doing it, and calling the British out for conspiring to commit genocide by selling these weapons to Suharto, knowing that they would be used for the continuing genocide. We spent 6 months in prison waiting for the trial, but we had some great witnesses, and we had this video with an East Timorese woman looking out afterwards saying, if you are human, you wouldn't allow these weapons to go, you know. And we won the court case, which was really good. Did about £1.5 million worth of damage to that aeroplane. And while we were in prison, some East Timorese prisoners actually wrote to us while we were in prison saying, from their prison in Indonesia, they managed to smuggle a letter out to us saying, well done, you downed a plane without any loss of life, which was great.
Yeah, fabulous. And you used quite small hammers, right? I always feel like there's some, I don't know, quite a sort of maybe a female kind of reference to using small domestic objects.
But also it just shows that ordinary people with ordinary tools can do a lot of damage. I mean, aeroplanes are quite fragile if you hit them in the right place, and we made sure we weren't anywhere near the petrol or anything like that. And you can make quite big holes in an aeroplane, you know. And in other actions, just by throwing things into the water or destroying the fences or whatever, and you can do that with quite small tools. And also you're not seen then as being very, very violent. You know, if you go in with bombs and, you know, fire and things like that, they're dangerous and difficult to control, but also can be misconstrued. An ordinary household hammer is quite sufficient.
Thanks. And over to you, Howey. What's the most daring thing that you've done as an activist? I know we've spoken before. It doesn't take very much effort on your part to get the attention of the police, does it? When you're in China doing a protest.
I think most scary thing I have done in my activism, it is when the first time I go to strike is feel like really scary, because I haven't seen any use to do activism on the streets before, whatever it is, a parade or a protest or any demonstrations on the streets. So when I really inspired by Greta and all these young people around the world, and they do this call for action, and I see there is no Chinese people are willing to stand out and to demand Chinese government to really take its responsibility. My mood is very worried, because I'm fearing that maybe after 30 years later, if I look back to this period of time, and I will be very guilty if I didn't do anything, because this time I'm already a vegan, I'm already a zero waste practitioner, and I already very touched about Greta's story and the millions climate activist story. But if I don't dare to step out and let my voice to really take it into account and let Chinese government to take its responsibility, then I actually also, in this toxic system, and I didn't do my best, so I will be really guilty. So that's the time that I really feel it's a point that set myself to dilemma that I didn't do any activism before. I didn't even seen an activism before, but I really want to change the system and really know what's gonna happen if we don't change this toxic system. So I think there are about 2 months I'm very hesitating about going to in front of the government or not to do the protest. And so on May 24th, 2019, I went to the Grilling People's Government, and it's very, it's very impressive, and it's very, very dedicated. It's very exciting, and I even just imagine maybe I will get shoot of this. So I think that's very impressive.
Yeah, it's going right outside of your comfort zones, isn't it? That's what we're sort of asking ourselves always to do, actually. And that I think the courage really that people show is so inspiring. So it causes you to act often when you see other people in action. Okay, so Ina Maria, you're an artist and a fashion designer, and we just met today quite briefly. I've been teaching sustainable fashion for quite a long time, which is obviously a total oxymoron. And we talked very, very briefly about the problems with the fashion industry. But do you want to just say something about how you feel towards the fashion industry where you are?
Yeah, I personally, well, as an artist, where I decided to actually do fashion design is because I like things, I like things to be specific and special, sorry, but also because of the search of identity. It's our identities have been influenced a lot, especially in Africa and in most parts of the globe. They've been influenced a lot by Western trends, by Western clothing. We don't even know what our grandparents used to wear. I mean, here I just happen to have this, which is basically like an ivory, and then you've got shells that are made into a certain dye. And this is something which is part of who we are, where we come from, but we don't talk about it anymore. And for me, when I started fashion, it was really to see how can I bring these two together. And then I was always fascinated with workshops, trying to see what will happen if I take something that's traditional, which is mine, and then I fuse it into something that I can wear when I want to, without I don't want it to look too traditional, but I also don't want it to look like everything else that you see in a shop. So, which is why when I did my studies and when I finished them in France, when I came back, this is what I started doing, teaching communities how to read industrial patterns, because most of these people or the seamstresses, they know how to sew, but they only make traditional dresses. They don't really know how to make other types of garments. And my idea with that was to give them a broader range of products that they could sell in their villages, because my target group was really rural and women living in impoverished communities. So that at least gave them a tool to learn and to learn, but also use their own traditional elements within those garments, which is why in my courses, I always make them write a story first, which is either I related to a subject that I felt like we need to address, or something that is related to their own towns. And one of the subjects that we explored was the woman in me, because in Namibia we have a very high rate of gender-based violence. So I wanted to hear their stories. So those stories, they wrote them down, they make drawings, and then they incorporated them within the outfits. And that comes in how we place the textiles. We play a lot with patchwork, and then we bring in the embroidery element. And the reason for that being is just to also show them that you can actually use inspiration from everywhere and bring in those elements so you can affirm who you are. So, because also coming from an African background where we come from a tradition of adornment, even if you look at the pre-colonial images of what we as Africans embodied, it's very much visual. If you look at the Nubas with the tattoos, or the scarifications, or with the jewelry that we wear, and that's like from north to south to southern Africa. Clothing is a way of communication. If you are a young girl about to get married, you wear certain outfits that communicate that. So it was really about how can we bring back these elements that have been taken away because of colonialism and because of religion. And also being an activist by birth, I'm proud of that. I must say that you also question a lot of things, because if you look at how the fashion industry is today, it is totally hypocritical. They're selling BT cotton that the poor farmers in India have to grow and elsewhere. And then, these people that are paid nothing, we are losing massive lands, not only because of the food, of the agricultural systems, but also because of the clothing industry. And then also how these textiles are produced and the number of chemicals that they're using that are actually poisoning rivers, and then the exploitation of the people in Bangladesh, in India, in Asia in general. So there's so much exploitation going on. And then when you buy your new top there in the UK, you forget about all of those processes. You forget that new top that you just bought for €5 or £2 cost actually more than what that person got paid in Bangladesh, So this is something that needs to be addressed, because again, it is based on the system of exploitation. And at the same time, it is also based on I would call it it is contributing to cultural genocide as well, because we are imposing a certain trends constantly. This is what the trend officers do. They're there to feed us junk that we don't need. So every single month you have a new trend. For what? Who can literally afford to buy all of that junk? And then again, it is made in such a way that it doesn't even last. You buy an underwear and then 3 months later the elastic doesn't work, or you buy a toy and then it is broken just the day that you buy it. Whereas in the 70s, people were much more conscious. You had clothing that lasted. Like even today, if you go in a secondhand shop, you will see that something that was still made in the 70s will still be intact. But something that was that ended up in a shop 3 months ago, you can't even wear it anymore. So no, we need system change in every single way.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I also think what's interesting for people who don't know so much about the fashion sector is that it is completely intertwined with the fossil fuel industry, and is completely dependent on big agriculture. And you talked about BT cotton, that's genetically modified type of cotton, which leaves farmers in spiraling states of debt, dealing with agricultural systems that are very, very toxic to the people that live and work on the land, and the people who deal with the fibre. And all the way throughout the chain, you have endemic human rights abuses, endemic problems with child labour, endemic abuse of women often as well. And so I do always feel, to me, the struggle for a not deadly fashion system in more ways than one is for me, it's completely tied into the struggle against climate breakdown. So let me just come back to my list of questions. I'm going to go to ask you, Angie, if you want to say anything about your book that's coming out, and also maybe just to say what your main major influences have been, inspirational people or inspirational other campaigns that you learned from along the way. I think you're on mute, Angie.
Sorry about that. Yeah, the book is called Activism for Life, and it just explains what I've been doing over the last 45 years in terms of peace and environmental human rights campaigning. I'm trying to bring out some of the lessons that I've learned over that period of time. And probably the most important thing is just to keep going and to learn from your own experience. Don't worry about making mistakes, that there's no right way to do anything. Just keep on experimenting and keep on doing it. Make as many links with people all around the world. And I suppose what draws it together, and something that I discovered in Cameroon when I saw, the crown, the dregs of colonialism still operating through the multinational corporations, really, is corporations and the power that corporations have in the world, the monetization of everything. And everywhere around the world, we're all suffering from a lack of having our power as people and as women and men and children taken away from us, and being told this is the way you have to do it, when the way that we're being told to do it is just making money for people and for corporations. And we can't eat and drink money. Money is just a tool, and yet that seems to be the root of what everybody is trying to do and trying to be successful in. And success is how much money you have and how many material possessions you have. And I mean, it's now very, very clear that free trade, corporate world of consumerism is destroying our planet. And I just try to bring that together in the book, just from my own experience. But I mean, it's an experience that is shared by millions of people all around the world. And as I said at the beginning, we really have to think of ourselves as global citizens. And a lot of us can be confused by cultural differences, national differences, different languages, different ways of expressing ourselves. And yet, really, it comes down to don't do anything that you wouldn't want done to yourself, and see things in terms of what's actually happening on the ground. With this fake news going around, so much information, how do you find out what's right and what's wrong? But actually, if you just think about it, what you're seeing, if you see a human rights abuse in front of you, you know it's wrong, and therefore you shouldn't be supporting it in any particular kind of way. The influences, you said, what has sort of inspired me is just seeing ordinary people all around the world, from all sorts of different backgrounds, confronting these powerful corporations and politicians and saying no, and laughing at the ridiculous things that they're telling us that we need and should have. We should be laughing at people more and just not taking them seriously, and listening to each other, listening to everybody, and also acting locally but thinking globally. So I live in a very small rural area on a border between Wales and England, and the colonialism from the English side taking over Welsh, destroying the language, is very similar to what Britain has done, or England has done, to many places around the world. And coming to Wales, I've kind of understood that a bit more, and working up in Scotland again. So a lot of the patterns, you talked about that, Ina Maria, the patterns that you see of exploitation and what's going on around the world, these patterns have been repeating for millennia. And actually now is the time that we have to stop these abuses from going on. I can only keep going because I can see all these different people around the world and all the different ages and people doing whatever they can locally. In our area, we have intensive poultry units going up, you know, to provide free, cheap food for people, which is destroying the environment. Agriculture is probably doing more, certainly more than cars and aeroplanes, to destroy our planet. And yet they're controlled by a few agribusinesses that are just raking in the money and trying to encourage people. Whereas indigenous ways and traditional ways, even in this country, of looking after animals, you knew your animals, you looked after them well, you didn't put them in sheds and destroy their capacity for a life of their own, and you didn't destroy the environment in the process. So we've turned farmers into factory owners, and by destroying our relationship with basic ethics, really, and compassion for everybody, but all species, we're destroying our planet. Oh, there's so much I could say, but go on to somebody else.
Thanks, Angie. Well, let's go and ask Howey to carry on from there, because I know you often introduce yourself as an activist who has a vegan diet. So do you want to talk about what made you take that choice?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question very well. Can you repeat it? Thank you.
Oh, sure. I just asked you what made you take the choice to become vegan as part of your activism.
Okay, so I remember it is in my grade 8 when I was a middle school student. On winter vacation, my aunts just come back home and bring a small booklet about veganism, and that's the first veganism information that I got, that elaborates how global warming and how the animal agriculture, and also it's related to veganism. And in this booklet, I really learned about that there are millions and actually billions of lives on the earth that are tortured by us every day, and the animals, they are sharing this planet with us. But why from the beginning of their life to the end of their life, they are all become the tools to fulfill the eagerness, the very toxic eagerness of humans. And this is completely unethical, and this is completely not acceptable to human and to me. So I just give a 3-day trial of the veganism diet. And on that night, actually, my parents took me to a place that all the dishes are containing the lambs. So that time, I faced the first time that I faced some kind of embarrassment on the table, and I think that's a time that every vegan maybe will have, but it is our further choice that if we choose to endure this pain from these animals, or we choose to make a right decision that we become a vegetarian or a vegan. So 1 year later, I had a dream that really let me feel the fear of life being going to death, and the real eagerness of being that's to the live when it is going to die. And animals share the same fear to death as humans, but why we want to fulfill our eagerness through the pain of others. So after that, I just become a vegan. And although on this process, there are a lot of debates every time on the table with my parents and with my friends, but I believe that the compassion to all the lives can really inspire people. So I have influenced 5 of my friends and also my family to be vegetarian diet, and we are keep sharing this information and keep fight for all lives.
Fabulous. Thanks, Howey. Yeah, it's contagious, isn't it, when you do these sort of big acts of compassion and take these big decisions. I've really noticed how doing something very dedicated with your own time does have like really near-term impacts on the people closest to you. They sort of look on and go, oh, oh, you're doing that. Why are you doing that? And then after some time, they start to understand the seriousness of why you're taking the actions, I guess. I mean, that's what I've felt from some of the stuff that I've done in the past, how it's affected my friends. Okay, I'm conscious of the time, and I wanted to get one more question round to you all. So I'm going to come to you, Ina Maria. What would you say to your younger self as an activist? If you could go back in time, what's your top advice for yourself?
Sure. You must ask my family, they will tell you. She always said a mind of her own. But what I would tell myself is never to be afraid, and to continue dreaming the impossible and making it happen.
Brilliant. Brilliant answer. Thank you. Angie, what's your advice to your younger self, or to us younger people and the rest of XR younger people?
That's a lifetime of work. Things don't change as quickly as we hope for. So just keep going and get a support network around you. You don't have to do this alone. And just keep going.
Fabulous, thanks. And Harry, what's your advice? Good advice for activists?
So I think for younger activists or younger myself, I would like to say that we should really see the possibilities of the world, and everyone actually share the same hearts of the deep connection to the earth, and actually there are no evil people on the earth, and I believe that everyone have the deep connection to the earth and to the land and to all the essentials in our life, which is the love and also the basics of our life, and all this earth are refreshing us and give to us the water and the food, the air, and all this. It is something that we need to treasure and we need to notice. And I believe that everyone have this connection to Earth and share these connections to people around us. And that's the possibility of change, that everyone actually can be a change maker and everyone can be inspired. So never lose hope and try another possibility. And yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah. And then the other thing, Howey, that I've just got a note here about is that before this call, you said to one of our team, Zoe, that you really just want people to stop being in meetings about climate change and get out there. So do you want to say something about that?
Yeah. Because what I want to say is that we really need to get out of the bubble of the activism and activists, because as Roger have said, is that we need to break out the bubble of the social wars. And maybe in the movement, we feel that maybe we have done the largest civil disobedience in history, and we have done the largest climate strike ever. But if we just go out to the streets and ask people, how much do you know about the climate change, or how the climate change is affecting your life? I just do a trial here in Berlin because I arrived here 1 month ago, and over 6 people of 10 people actually don't want to answer the question about the climate change, and only 2 people are acting on their life and use their political rights to fight for the climate. So, and as I know, in the activism and among activists, we actually spend a lot of time in the internal coordination and internal communication. And if we can just spend those times every day just to knock on others' doors, or just stand on the streets to do the advocates, just imagine how much we can do. We need more outputs, we need more actions. And even in the pandemic, we acknowledge this is the disaster of humanity, but we should make it as an alarm to all of us. This is the consequences of not listen to the science, not listen to the medical experts telling us for the last 30 years. And and this is also our reason to act, because if we don't act now, then the bigger crisis, the climate emergency, it will affect us more in the future and right now. So this is just an alarm, and this is a push for us to do more and unite beyond the politics and beyond the borders. Yeah, so I think my point is that we really should to break out of the social wars and to try the possibilities to connect to larger groups and to just talk to people on the street, talk to people around us, and really to share our deep compassion and our deep grief and rage to the earth, to more people, to let more people to really join us and be part of the solution. Yeah.
Thanks, love. Such a good call to action. And we have to get creative in the pandemic times as well, don't we? And I'm really excited watching all of the new ways that people are coming up with creative things that we can do whilst we're still in these quite difficult times. Ina Maria, let's just to close, how do you want people to support you? Can you tell people about how they can help with your work, how they can support what's happening in Namibia?
So that's a difficult one. I think the best is to follow Frag Free Namibia and Botswana on Facebook. That's where we have most of the updates. We also have a Fridays for Future page, Instagram, and Twitter. but the most active one is the Twitter accounts, Frag Free and Fridays for Future. But Facebook is definitely Frag Free Namibia, Botswana, because that is where you really have the updates of what is happening on the ground. And that is where we will also communicate the type of assistance that we might require. For now, I think it's really about sharing, helping us to share, find out if there are actions happening close by to where you stay. If there's nothing happening in your town, please make a plan, get in touch, and go knock on the embassies of Namibia, Canada as well, please. Go knock on the embassies and tell them that this is unacceptable. And and thank you very much for your support. Thank you.
Thank you for coming in, Maria. And also, just to anyone out there who's in the UK, there are some offices of Recon Africa here in the UK as well. Could also knock on their doors. Okay, Angie, over to you. I've got a question from the chat. Somebody's just sent me. How can people buy your book? But also, how can people support ongoing anything else that you're working on?
You can buy the book by going to the Trident Ploughshares website, and it'll tell you how to do it there. So that's good. The other thing is XR Peace have a good website, and on there are some very good digital leaflets that will explain the links between the military and climate change. And given that so many human rights abuses are being supported and backed up by arms companies, there are arms companies all around the world. There's loads in Britain. And so what I would suggest people do is get together locally and go and blockade and do as many actions as you can to try and stop this business as usual. Just last week, a nuclear convoy went from Burfield up to Scotland, so with our nuclear weapons, while everybody else is locked away with these COVID restrictions. The military are still continuing their awful actions. Corporations are still mining and fracking and pulling out the oil, etc., cutting down trees. Logging in Sarawak is still going on, even in parks that are meant to be protected. So basically, the corporations are continuing to do stuff, so we need to get out there and stop it. So let's go and do it. As you said, Howey, no more meetings, go out and do it.
Brilliant note to end on. Thanks, Angie. I really want to get off Zoom and go and do real work in the real world. So that's your call to action, everybody. Thanks for joining us. And thank you, wonderful women, for joining me. And happy Women's Day.